A warm good afternoon and Jai Hind, dear children. Welcome back to Shomi Ma'am's English class. Today, children, we'll be dealing with a very important and a new topic which you had been coming across while writing your creative writing topics, while speaking, while informing something to someone. Well, what I'm talking about is the narration. Now, in narration, what do we do exactly? We talk about direct and indirect speech. Now, if I say that he said, I'm hungry. Okay, so what is actually happening? This is the direct speech. Why? Because here he said, that means there is a speaker who is talking about something. Now, what happens in indirect speech? In indirect speech, actually there is a listener. Just see here, I have written that direct speech involves a speaker who is very important in that sentence. And in indirect, what is happening? We are actually informing it to another person, and that person becomes the listener. Now today, I'll tell you a few tips you can say and few do's and don'ts while going along with this direct and indirect speech. So as I was talking about this example, he said, I'm hungry. So now when I'm saying he said I'm hungry, that is nothing, that is but a direct speech. It is kind of a dialogue. And when I'm talking about a dialogue, let's see what are the essentials. So when I'm writing a direct speech, as you can see here, I have written in this blue color, he said, and then there is a comma. Okay, so in direct speech, children, please remember the most essential part is the punctuation. So the very first thing which involves is the comma, and then the comma is always written after the reported verb. So the reporting verb in a direct speech is generally supposed to be said. S-A-I-D, said, is always the reporting verb. Now after this reporting verb, you will find that there is this punctuation, that is comma. You would find the open quotes here. Then there is the dialogue, whatever is the sentence. Then you have a closing quote, and then the full stop is always there, which denotes that is the end of the sentence. Right. So this is specifically what a direct speech looks like. It will always have open quotes and a closed quotes. That means within the quote there is a sentence. Now it will also have a reporting verb, and after the reporting verb there is a comma. Okay, so these two things are essential, and the third essential thing is the reporting verb, that is said. Okay, so that was about direct. Now let's jump on to indirect speech. So when I'm informing something to another person, okay, so that becomes the reported speech, okay, and reported speech is nothing but the indirect speech. That means when I'm informing somebody's things to the other person, whereby there is a change of tense, there might be a change of pronoun, then there will be a change in this reporting verb. Now what will the reporting verb turn out to be? So I will turn that reporting verb said into three very important verbs. That is, it will change into that, T-H-A-T, that, which you might have learned as conjunctions. Then you have if, then you have whether, and then you have to. Okay, so the said will turn into, it might turn into that, it might have if, it might involve whether, it might involve to. Then another thing to keep in your minds is that there will be a change of tense. Okay, and then like supposing if in direct speech you have the usage of say am, it tends to become was when I'm writing in an indirect speech. When in direct speech it is the verb used is will, then in indirect speech it tends to become would. Okay, so we'll get into it as and when we deal with few more examples. Okay, so that was the basic thing. So let's look at this example which I started with. He said, comma, open quotes, I am hungry, close quotes, and then we have a full stop. So now in an indirect speech, children, what are we doing? The very first thing, as I told you, that there will be that. Okay, now this comma will be replaced by that. He said that I will become he. Okay, why? Because when the speaker is saying that that person is hungry, so you will have to look into the gender of the subject. So since it is male, so that is why it is he, and then this I will become he, because that particular person is talking about himself, that he was hungry. So right now what did I say? I told that he was hungry. So that is nothing but I'm reporting it. Okay. So that is what is indirect speech all about. So let's see. It will be he said. This comma will turn into that. I will turn into he. Am will turn into was. As I told you that there will be change of tense. And then hungry will remain same. So in indirect speech, he said, I am hungry. It will be, he said that he was hungry. Okay. Now, in your books, I want you all to take out page number 153. So, we are dealing with page number 153. This is the page wherein you are having this chapter, direct and indirect speech. Children, you would find that there is a chart given in on page number 153, wherein there are few set of examples and we are showing how the things are turned into. Okay, actually, it's just the difference between direct speech and an indirect speech. So what happens in a direct speech is that the exact words of the speaker is indicated. Okay, there is no change, no, nothing to turn with the reporting verbs or nothing to do with the other aspects. Okay, it remains the same. But what happens in an indirect speech? The speaker's words are reported by someone in his or her own words. Okay, so that means we are just talking about that particular thing to somebody else. So now that means I'm reporting those particular things to the third person. Okay, so that is the first difference. Now what about the second difference? The second difference is the words of the speakers are written within inverted commas, as I indicated here, the open quotes and the close quotes. But in an indirect speech, we don't have any kind of punctuations as in the open quotes or the close quotes. We don't have. Why? Because we are just, reproducing, we are just talking about that particular quoted thing to the third person. Okay, so thereby we are removing that inverted commas. Now let's talk about the third rule. Now the introductory verb, that means the reporting verb used in a direct speech is said. Look, I have written here reporting verb said, and after said there is a comma in direct speech. But in an indirect speech there is no comma. Okay, the comma is totally removed, and then it is always, you'll find that it is either said to. Let me write it here so that you all don't forget. Now, in an indirect speech, what happens? Either it is said to or it is told to. That means the reporting verb changes into this said to and told to. This you really have to remember, that this reporting verb indirect, that is said, turns out to be said to or told to when I'm reporting, when I'm talking about that person to the third person. Okay, now let's jump on to the fourth rule. So children, pay attention. I am talking about the rules. Okay. A comma separates the introductory part and the exact words of the speaker. Now, as I have given this example, now these inverted commas, they are doing what? They are simply separating. They are putting aside the reporting verb one side and the words which were spoken on the other side. But in an indirect speech, there is nothing to do with such, separation of things. So in indirect speech, what are we doing? We are actually adding this that in place of that particular comma which we had used for separating the reporting verb from the actual words by the speaker. Okay. The comma is not at all used. You will not find, look, in this sentence, is there any comma? There is no comma. So I replace this comma from rather by using the word that. Okay. Now the last important rule about direct and indirect speech is that the speaker, he or she uses the first person pronoun to speak for himself or herself. But when I'm talking about an indirect speech, the first person pronoun is changed to the third person. Like here, I is changed into he because, in this particular aspect, that particular speaker being a male talks about himself. So when I'm talking about that particular words, when I'm trying to reproduce it, when I'm trying to talk about those things to another person, somebody else, some third person, then what I'll do, that will turn into third person. Okay, now let's talk about what is given next. Now we'll be gradually dealing with few examples. Okay, the verbs are usually in present tense when I'm talking about direct speech. Okay, the auxiliary verbs like be form verbs is, am, are will be used in their direct speech. Okay, now when I'm talking about the indirect speech, those is, am, are will turn into was. Okay. Now, same goes with the perfect tense verbs like has, have will turn out to be had. Then when I'm talking about can will turn into could. When I'm talking about will or shall, that will turn into would, should. May will turn into might. Okay. And must will turn into had to. Okay, so these are very important verbs which you need to lock in your brains. Okay, I hope it will remain inside, isn't it? Okay, good job. All right, now on present tense forms of the verb in the direct speech are changed into the past forms. Okay, that is how is, am, are turned into was and were. Okay, same went with the has and have turned to had. Okay, so we need to remember these few nitty-gritties while changing into reported speech. Now let's deal with the tense wise direct speech. Let me rub. I hope everybody must have noted down these. Okay, let's start. So now we are dealing with page number 154. Okay, so in page number 154 you have a beautiful chart which clearly mentions how the tenses tend to change. Let's deal with one by one. Now, the very first thing is we'll be talking about simple present tense. Okay. Ria said, look, I'm putting a comma, open inverted quote, like eating cakes.